Hello and welcome to the Breaking Free podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Francis, and today I'm very grateful to be joined by Quanti Mama and Jodi. I found Jodi through a mutual friend of ours. I'm mentoring their son, and she recommended I speak to Jodi. And I sent her a message last week, and we had a phone call, and we've made it happen today. Jodi does a lot of things, actually. Jodi runs Quanti Mama, which is a high vibe home birthing facility that they're building, like what I've just heard then, it's also a website, so quantimama.com. You can find Jodi on there. She does home birthing, homeschooling, and I'm not sure what else, but there's heaps of cool stuff there. And yeah, I'm looking forward to this chat today about what Jodi does, how she got to where she is now, and everything else that will come up today. So Jodi, welcome to the show today. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Nathan. Obviously, I'm delighted to be here because I think we share a lot of really beautiful ideologies together too. I love what you're putting out there and oh gosh, the thing that men need to hear, and young men need to hear. It's so vital.
I agree. I agree.
Hmm.
So Jodi, tell me about, so you were a paramedic for 20 years and
Yeah,
then
yeah,
you sort of
18.
did a
Yeah,
massive detour this way and
I
now you're
did.
doing home birthing and homeschooling. How did all that start?
Well, it's funny. I mean, I've been someone who's always been interested in lots of different things, and I think one thing I'm really grateful for is the last 4 years. I mean, I'm definitely not grateful for a lot of the fuckery that came around with that. I don't know. This might be PG actually,
No,
so
it's not. Swear, it's
apologies.
fine.
Good. Okay. I am known for swearing. Um, yeah, but Miguel and I have, always come from a really practical place, and we were both emergency services, and, I was an AMBO and absolutely loved my job. And I did leave before the craziness hit, and then went to go back, and I was working in non-emerge ambulance when everything just went nuts, and clinical assessments seemed to go out the window in 2020. And so yeah, that basically meant that whole chapter of my life got closed off, which was yeah, I mean, it's still a blessing, but there's a part of me that misses that because it is really fun driving lights and sirens. There's no doubt about that. But there was always interest in other things. And I think what happened around 2020 was something dropped in where I just thought I need to keep talking to people about how powerful they are, and really reawakening to their inner resources, not teaching them. People don't need to be taught. They need to remember. They need to
Mm.
remember themselves. And I think that's something that you really resonate with as well. And so the ways that I help people remember themselves was through High Vibe Birth, which was a course that I wrote. And that's just my love affair with birth, just gifted to other expectant parents, which is just about um, wrestling back birth with to bring it back into the family unit, because it has become so industrialized, and there's such a language of permissiveness in there. Oh, they won't let me do this, or I'm not allowed to do that, or I'm allowed to go to this many weeks. And I'm like, this is nuts, man. This whole thing started off with a bit of mummy and daddy time, for want of a better word. So no one else was involved. They're like the most intimate experience you can have as a human. That's how that life got created, right? And from there, we suddenly just keep putting it further out. If you think of ourselves as, this orbit of sort of multiple dimensions, we just keep handing birth further out, which is just wild to me when it started as like the seed or the acorn within the body, right? So from an energetic perspective, it's not congruent with what's actually happening with this growing child. Anyway, so that was the birth thing, right? That's kind of where my mind's at with that. Empowering expectant parents to know that um, they are right to listen to their inner wisdom, and advocate for their child and themselves, because birth is, in my experience, like probably, if not the most transformational, it would be one of the most transformational experiences you can have. I think another one that I would have seen a lot of, obviously, in ambulance was near-death experiences as well. So,
Ooh.
they tend to be the massive pivots in people's life, but the birth thing has been watered down so much that we give it away all the time, like so much so that we book in for surgery to remove this child from us. And there are obviously always times where it's appropriate, but there is a gazillion times where it's not. So that's one side of Quanti Mama. But funnily enough, when I was birthing Quanti Mama, which I call my fifth child, I was looking to marry up mother and quantum because I want to bring people into the awareness of the quantum field. And the funny thing is, I couldn't get the name I wanted, but what was available was Quanti Mama, which is really funny because it translates to many mothers. And that's what this is moving into, is a space where we get a whole lot of mothers essentially sharing their wisdom. So I'm working with another dear friend of mine at the moment who's just rocks the curiosity thing. She's so interested in this and that and just questioning the narrative. And so there are so many ways that women, I think this is a time for women, or the divine feminine, to bring us back into self, to bring the softness back into society. And so, so I think that's infused through Quanti Mama. And so the other thing that really came through during the craziness was that we decided, no, we didn't decide to. We got forced into homeschooling at gunpoint by our then 5-year-old, who basically said, I'm not going back after the lockdowns in Victoria. And that was obviously a gift in itself too, because now we're homeschooling the 4 kids, but very much doing it. Every time I look at what would the institution do, I look for the alternative. Because what I saw in my kids when I pulled them back from school was how much the institution, through its efficiency, had started removing the sense of self from these children, which is probably why your voice is so important, because you're picking up those kids now, or those young men who have essentially been stripped down from their sense of self and have, just made themselves busy with all the superficial things of life, some of the low vibe stuff, but also high vibe stuff that still doesn't ask them, what do you say? What's right for you? What's your personal set of instructions on this one? So I feel like I need to take a breath for you, but there's a lot of passion in this. So I really love I love making mind movies, which are just like a really fast 2-minute high vibe meditation. They're visual, they've got words, and they are really effective at reprogramming or dropping slave programs for us to actually see what's right for us. So they can be fantastic. And we wrote a course for we started running intro to homeschooling classes at our house back in, I don't know, maybe 2021, 2020, I can't remember. We basically just grabbed people in the community and said, want to understand what's going on, and we just held 2-hour free sessions of just uniting in the community. And that was really interesting because the community needed uniting in that time. People weren't sure what was going on. It was very confusing in Victoria. It was like lockdown with 5 minutes notice, and people knew it wasn't right, but they didn't know how to say anything other than okay. So they did. As we know, there's so much compliance because people are really, they want to be good, kind people. And so there's that people pleasing part of us, isn't there, where we just do that. But there was questions about what was going on, I think, for kids in that time. So so that then developed into this course that then McGill and I started running, which is called Take the Leap, but ostensibly it's about deschooling the parents. And that's why I'm just so excited about all the work you're doing, because I really feel like we need to get to the parents. It's our programming that keeps these kids essentially oppressed, because they look around them for their mentors, and obviously often that's their parents and guardians and senior figures in their life for that confirmation that they're okay to listen to their own voice. And so it's the program of the parents that they just keep coming back to, going, okay, like how is my kid meant to show up in the homeschool space? And they basically replicate institutional models at home. And the kids, man, they're made for these times. So they call bullshit on that really fast. So And it's way easier to be non-compliant at home than it is in a classroom where you've got, 24 other kids with you as well. So, yeah, so QM is, I love an acronym. QM is absolutely anchored in how do we leave people in a better place? Like that's just what I'm about. And, the things I know about are the things I share about. But, we are just, we just love having high vibe conversations. We have high vibe conversations on our podcast, and it's about just finding a way through life that really honors the self and community. And I think that that's how we're going to get out of a lot of this mess of control that we're finding ourselves in, is just people going, how does that sit with me? And is it a yes or is it a no? So, yeah, so that's kind of what's happened for us and where the birth of Quanti Mama has sort of come from. And goodness knows where it's going.
That's awesome. So much to unpack there, obviously. But we can go back to the home birthing, I think, because I've got a couple of things here I'd like to. There's a massive, not a stigma, but like a lot of fear porn out there in terms of birthing. You see it on the TV shows, in the movies, about women screaming in pain, wanting the drugs to take the pain away of a home birth. Now,
Yeah.
when I went down the rabbit hole of birthing and went, oh my God, even they're lying about that too,
Yep.
I found out that it's actually a meditative process to give birth to a child. And I was like, oh my God,
Yep.
tell me more about that.
That is so true. So again, the benefit of experience, of less than desirable experiences, lead us to making better decisions. So when we had our first, I very much was just like, it doesn't cost anything to get pregnant, so let's just get out of this without spending any money. So I went to a tertiary hospital in Melbourne, but it was a public system. There was no continuity of care. And the short version of what happened was I was prepared. I did do some antenatal classes. I learned about breathing and meditation and visualization. And I think that is a must do for anyone pregnant. You must prepare for the birth you want. You just must. You wouldn't go run a marathon without doing a little bit of training and stretching, right?
Mm,
So this is going to be one of the biggest marathons of your life, because you don't even know how long it takes, and there's another human that has a consciousness in their own way deciding how they want to be born too. So you don't have, full control of the situation. But yeah, that experience at the hands of care providers who just didn't didn't think with presence about their decisions, about what they were doing and how that might impact me, it turned into a mess. It went from being a really beautiful birth to being an absolute cluster experience. And I got to wear the brunt of that, which was really interesting to me. Like physically, I got to wear the brunt of it. So naturally, I went, right, that hospital birth did not work. So the next one we decided to do was a home birth. And my family were quietly supportive. McGill's family, bless his mum and dad, who are now deceased, his mum was petrified. She was just so worried that it was going to go wrong. And as you say, that programming that birth is dangerous, I have appreciated the beauty of gaslighting that has happened for us over millennia, right? The gaslighting around birth is just, I mean, it is beautifully curated for us to believe that our bodies are broken.
yeah.
They are not made to do this. We don't question getting pregnant for the most part. So, but we are highly sensitive to the idea that birth is somehow this terrible trauma that you have to go through and you need rescuing from. Exactly as you say, you need the meds, you need the medics, you need your whole team around you. And I'm not advocating for free birth. I had private midwives for the next three. And so, the joke was that I quite liked birth. So we kept having babies until McGill worked out what the issue was. We got that corrected. But but the whole thing was that when we had our home birth, it so this is the first home birth, our second daughter. And in fact, we have a birth film that's used in education classes. There's another thing, hilarious,
Oh,
isn't it? Anyway,
cool.
just quietly, there's a home birth. Well, I mean, it's a birth film that I made to prove that the techniques work, because I'm like, well, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to prove it. And so,
Ah,
yeah. So we did that too. And so that's there as public record, essentially, that you can have an ecstatic birth. And that's what our daughter's birth was. It was ecstatic. It was so ecstatic that I thought it was unremarkable because everyone else has horror stories. And again, that's just another um, tendril of this warped idea that we have about birth, that I didn't think it was extraordinary. So I didn't tell many people about that birth because I got that it made them feel uncomfortable. And I feel like as I emerge into the later part of my 40s, I'm getting better at going, do you know what? Birth absolutely rocks. And I mean, literally, I had someone this morning say to me, oh, I've had that injury, but I tell you, then I think about the births I've done. And I was like, oh, that injury was no big deal because of birth. And I said, oh, I love birth. I would choose birth any day of the week. In fact, I would choose birth if I had nothing else planned for the day because birth is amazing. And I think what happens is in society, we have resoundingly women who don't know what it is to step into that power. And because what happens in home, well, not even home birth, but we'll call it undisturbed birth, right? What happens in undisturbed birth, which is free of pharmaceuticals, free of even energy fields that kind of throw you out, right? So imagine you're having an intimate time, right, with someone who you love. So the visceral feeling of the love it's everywhere. It's in your aura, it's through all your cells, it's in the surrounding energy field around you, like you're just oozing this love. That's where birth is meant to take place, in that really safe, loved, you know, experience where when you then give birth and this baby is in your arms, and then all of the hormones in your body just reveal themselves to support you in this, you realize what you can achieve in life. Like everything else will pale in comparison. It just does, because you're looking at this human that you've created in your arms, and you know how strong you are. You know where, well, you don't quite know your depths, but you've got an idea that you've got more. If you ever need to, it's a tap you just turn on. You go, I need more. Okay, I turn the tap on. I just dig a bit deeper, or I just expand into my heart and I balloon that out a bit more. Like that's what undisturbed birth can do for people. And we rob them of that every single day. We rob them of it when we talk about traumatic birth. We rob them of it when we instill our fear into that expectant mum and her baby who's also paying attention, because they experience every thought, feeling, and emotion that the mother experiences. So you got a twofer. You want to take down a pregnant woman and have some kind of impact on her birth, then talk to her about all the problems that are likely to happen, and why it's important that she gives her power away. So I think there's a feistiness in me that just can't quite believe that I talked about this the other day, the sloppiness of society where we have permitted this to occur. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does
Where
make sense.
yeah, so we just never kind of went, oi, like maybe let's do that differently. And so I think as I ripen with age, like good wine, I feel like I'm getting greater conviction about this stuff. Women need the option to birth in spaces, and fathers need the option to birth in those spaces as well, because the father is born equally as the mother is. And what I see is that just like school, hospital is not a bad place. As I remarked earlier, I dislocated my shoulder last week. I was very grateful for hospital, and I was very grateful for pharmaceuticals the other day, as they, put the shoulder back where nature intended. However, when we birth in those places, just as when we school our children in traditional schooling systems, other interests end up having too much of a vote at the table. Does that make sense? And so in this space where you're bringing new life into the world, sometimes those interests have a prevailing narrative that they then do. They then get to exercise in that very sacred space. So, what home birth does, and I think it's very interesting when we look at, I guess, there has been essentially a war on home birth for quite some time, is that there's definitely an effort to remove options from people and seduce them with other options. And I always look at what the government's funding. And I don't mean to be a complete tinfoil hat, but I'm just curious about that, because all of it comes down to cost benefit analysis. There is always a play at hand. And I know that sounds cynical, but I think after the last 4 years, we're right to be cynical and certainly
Mm-hmm.
curious as around that too. So, yeah, so partly what we want to do is we've just started opening up a space that we have that I actually gave birth in. It's called the Birth Sanctuary Bellarine. And it's a space that people can hire, much like it's like an Airbnb. They can hire and they can bring their birth team in and they can give birth in a space that is just so energetically sound. Like it's such an incredible space to birth in. It's not a converted garage or anything like that. Like this space is just oozing all the things one needs for an amazing birth. And, that's what my birth course is about. It's about coming back to self. What do you say? How do you feel? How does this sit with you? How do you want it to be? How do you want to reawaken to your own power? And then when there are those programs that we notice, then we look for ways to basically reprogram and drop the crap that we don't need going into these experiences. And, like it's not a guarantee you'll homeschool if you home birth, but there's a higher chance of it. So just, trust that it all is well if that's how it works out. I mean, I'm not into recruitment drive. I'm not interested in prescribing anything. My birth course is for women who are having Caesars just as it is for women who are having home birth. There's no exclusion there. It's about really retaining that experience as your own and feeling confident to not arm yourself, but surround yourself with people who also will advocate for you as well, rather than just give the experience away. Don't give it away, because it takes 9 months to make another, so it's quite an investment.
Mm. That's so much to unpack with all of that. I don't know where to start with all that actually, but you've really opened up my eyes to this stuff. It's quite powerful stuff. And how did you how did it go doing something completely different to anyone out there in society? I know the last 4 years we all did stuff that was different, but how did that go doing something completely tinfoil bodysuit like? Like, how did that go in terms of your friendship group, the community that you must have once had, and obviously your family? Like, how was the perception and the perspective of dealing with all of that as well? Like, you're
Yeah,
crazy about a home birth.
it's an interesting thing, isn't it? I mean, look, I'm well known as being balls and all. So once I decide on something, I'm also known for the 180 pivot. So if I change my mind, I just own it.
Yeah.
And I try to drop the ego. I think that what's happened as I've gone on is I've just got better at adopting that idea that if someone has an opinion, then that's for them to that's theirs, and
Mm.
that's not about me. It doesn't define me. I haven't mastered this by any means, but I'm a work in progress towards that. I'm not trying to be a give a fuck kind of person. That's because I feel that has an energy around it as well. So it's like it's this unconditional pure love, and what's right for me, what's right for my kids. Like I have a radical responsibility because I brought them in. And so once I got comfortable with the idea of radical responsibility, radical self-responsibility, then I'm like, okay, everyone else that comes in to say this birth experience, they're by invitation. And when when I feel that they are not harmonious to that and they are not helping the experience be better, then they get discharged or released or excused from that, right? So you curate it. And then the other thing is that I very much live my life working in harmony with with the universal energy, right? I just figure we're all connected in, we're all hooked in. We're probably just wearing skin sacks and we are eternal beings.
100%.
That's I reckon that's where we're at now.
Mm-hmm.
And so based on that, I have a responsibility to look after the skin sac and the skin sac of my children. But I also trust that if I'm being limited by my own programs, which may be gifted by society or those around me, that then the universe will give me a pebble to get my attention. And then if it doesn't come
Mm-hmm.
out, then it'll throw a rock and then it'll throw a brick, like, dislocating a shoulder. I got a message to slow down. So I'm also very grateful for that. And now what I do is I just adopt that stuff as foundational beliefs. They're just foundational beliefs. I believe that I am supported. I believe that mostly I am loved. Sometimes I'm not very good at loving myself. I believe that we're here to improve the situation in some measure. And I just trust that those that are around me are here for whatever reason they're here for. And so relationships come in for a reason, a season, or a lifetime, and they reveal themselves. And so it's about, discharging people with love. And so as those relationships fall away, they're sent with love because they're on a different pathway. I mean, you can start at the same center point, but if you are off by even, a tenth of a degree, then you will end up in vastly different destinations, and even the journey will be different. And so it's just about going, okay, where are people at? And so I very much want to meet people where they're at. That's why I'm
Mm-hmm.
not about hitting people over the head with my stuff. It's an invitation. You
Yeah.
get to partake. And one of the greatest gifts that a friend said to me long time when I was probably in tears after some ill-fated relationship had gone down the toilet after 5 minutes. And he said, you just need to tone yourself down. And I really appreciate those words because in that moment, I thought, like, fuck, I'm not doing that. So you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I love him to bits because he offered that to me as an option for life. And I was like, nah, not doing that. Definitely just going to keep grabbing life by the balls and working out the next thing. And McGill, bless his cotton socks, just jumps on for the ride. He's just he has a huge amount of grace and humor with the stuff that I do. So for the most part, he just gets super excited and we just, go on. So I think McGill might be my lifetime guy. He's my just great love affair. The kids, I decide on whether they're a reason or a season, depending on the day. They're probably a lifetime, but that's parenting, right? You want the option to bury them in the backyard occasionally. And you just keep lime on hand. I'm just kidding. Obviously, if anyone's listening, I'm not really going to kill my children. I'm just going to fantasize about it, which is the right of all parents.
uh, just some more questions in terms of the home birthing process. Can anyone jump on Quanti Mama and book in that home birthing space from all over Australia? Because I've got listeners all over the country that'll probably be interested
Yeah,
in
wow.
this. Yeah.
I mean, the first thing I would do is I would get yourself some really high quality antenatal education where you
Yep.
reawaken to yourself. So, if people resonate with my vibe, then you look at High Vibe Birth, which is just a self-paced course that's online and
Yep.
it's pretty comprehensive. I don't know, it's about 14, 15 hours of content. It's a lot. But I poured everything in there that I think you need to consider when you're preparing for your baby's birth. Then if you decide, once you work out where you want to birth, then absolutely the Birth Sanctuary Ballerina is an option for people. It's available and you can book in and it just becomes your oasis, no doubt about it. But there are so many places you can birth. Ultimately, you need to apply the litmus test of where would I like to get intimate and then apply that to where you'd like to give birth. And that can be cultivated in a hospital. And it certainly is easier to cultivate when you have continuity of care. So when you have a connection with care providers that follow you through the pregnancy, it just totally changes women's experiences. And the birth trauma thing just drops. Like it becomes almost inconsequential because they have people in their tribe that are invested in their wellness and their experience, and that's where it's at. But the first thing we need to do is we need to be aware that we must educate ourselves. We must invest in this. People spend a ridiculous amount of time researching what pram to buy. You're
Mm-hmm.
going to use that for, I don't know, 4 years. It's nothing. It's absolutely nothing for your relationship with your child. And more than that, your relationship with self. You got that for the rest of your life. So why not grab an experience that is curated for your transformation and, just dive in deep. So yeah, but I'm just want people to, feel great about stuff. So people are welcome to get in touch with me. But yeah, I'm all about find what will fire you up for the high vibe, for the high vibe experience. Because what happens is when you learn this stuff, and it's all a catalyst, right? When we learned birth stuff and when we got right into it, it armed us with breathing techniques. And it was really interesting because my relaxation, intentional relaxation and meditation practices and mindfulness and things like that. And the other day when I dislocated my shoulder, it was really interesting because I got to call on my breath practice. And I didn't have that before I had kids. I had no idea. So when I was in the throes of just allowing the pain to move through me and outside of me as my body was, objecting to its positioning, I was able to bring my respiratory rate down to about 2 a minute. Now, my only reference for breathing that slowly way back in ambulance was people who had had a heroin overdose. So it was really interesting to be able to cultivate that within and it be a source of analgesia as a way to just reduce the sensations, or I should say, be okay with the sensations. And, we have these techniques that we can then use like in so many different ways that it just extraordinary. You don't have to go dislocate your shoulder to breathe slowly. You could just be having a moment where you need to recenter yourself, and you have this at your fingertips in the most available way, and your body knows, and it thanks you by responding immediately. So it's just, I just think, if we need permission as, these beautiful community members to have certain events that then prompt us to go and do stuff, whether it's a wedding or a birth or a moving house or an operation or whatever it might be, but these punctuations and milestones in our life, then we must find the way to get the juice out of it. I mean, that's the deal with being in the skin sack and having the earthly experience. It's about, sucking in all of that and then integrating it and then spitting it back out into community to up-level community. I think that's the meaning of life. Well, not completely the meaning of life, but part of it. That's the juice of it. And when you get to the other side of those experiences, you're like, whoa, okay, that's why I had that experience, and amazing. Okay, where is the springboard for this? Where am I going to end up? And, that's what I think. I think with these experiences, you don't know where you're going to end up, but you must open the invitation to it in the first place. You must RSVP. You must show up. And then where it goes from there is, again, just that communion with the universal field, or whatever you call that.
With an open heart and an open mind.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And a good amount of humility and just I think that all these things require surrender and trust. But yes, an open heart. I mean, you think about what the heart field can do and how that can impact other people as well. It's just wild. So yeah, just finding I guess the alignment and energy. All has its certain frequencies, and you can tell when things are out and there is a discordance, and you can find when it is in alignment. And it's about finding that alignment, and the heart just loves being in alignment. It just does, and it echoes through the cells of the body, and the cells of the body say, this is the truth, keep going. So I just love that feedback. It's beautifully elegant.
That's awesome. In terms of, is there anything else you'd like to share, Jodi? Anything
Well,
else on your mind?
I think I love the fact that you are speaking to to a whole cohort of people in our community that are learning they can say yes and no. And I would just encourage them to keep going with that. Like, keep working out, how can I say yes? How can I say no? I think we're going to have many more opportunities for that. And so one of the things that we say, in fact, our 8-year-old says it probably way too much in our household, but he's a great monitor for it, is that we don't do the shoulds. So we notice when a should comes up, and I think a should is a red flag and probably a program that's not our own or a condition of society. So anytime someone says should in our household, he says, fuck the shoulds.
No.
Not right having a child say that. I will say also he's been saying it for 3 years. So in fact, he was like 5 or 6 years old when he started saying fuck the shoulds. And he's got so comfortable he says it out in public now, which is hilarious.
No, that's even better.
But it's good because he's a next generation coming in to say, you know what, that's probably not what you want to do. That's an alarm for you. And so, yeah, he's hilariously just shining his light for people where they go, I should do this and should do that. And one thing that I think that if we can get the message out there is people start noticing what's theirs and what's not theirs, and starting to just work out, okay, what's the right pathway here? Even just all those tiny little decisions that we make in every single day, they end up making the tapestry of your life and overall energy field. And so that's where that very simple thing of going from either fear or love gets to play out. And love is the growth space, it's the expansion space, and it's infectious in the best way possible. Fear will close down, it will drop your immune system, it will affect your relationships, and it basically will implode on itself because it is only smoke and mirrors. And again, it's a gifted thing. It's a science of the images. So there is definitely an opportunity here for us to just listen with our heart and feel the resonance in our body, and you will get your yes and no's. So if I can leave you with anything, I would just say, fuck the shoulds.
Where can people find you, Jodi? Give yourself a plug.
Well, they can find us at Quanti Mama. So that's like quantimama.com. And, I'm a little bit crap at socials, but we're on there. And it's a love-hate relationship. And we've got a podcast called Fuck the Shoulds as well, because, I'm all about basically trying to swear in public in an appropriate way.
Yeah.
So we're out there, but I just want to encourage people to just keep talking, keep listening, keep noticing their heart, because if nothing else, that's what society needs, and that's where we will come together. That's the richness, and then we know why we're here.
Jodi, that was awesome. Thank you for sharing all that you shared today.
Nathan, thanks for being so generous.
No worries. I just found you through mutual friends, and it was a really awesome conversation. And I definitely will get you back on in the near future, because I feel like a lot of people are going to have some questions about everything we covered today. So thank you so much for jumping on and sharing all of that. That was awesome.
Amazing. Thanks, Nathan. I'll look forward to connecting again soon.
Yes, this has been the Breaking Free podcast. I will talk to you all again soon. Thank you for listening and watching wherever in the world you are. And we are over and out. Cheers.